Hello, this is Angelia, and you are listening to or watching the podcast, Why You Do What You Do. The podcast talks about human development and child psychology so that you can maybe figure out a little bit more about why you do what you do. Last time we were talking about, friendships and how that's important as you're growing up, and we're going to take back up on that. The capacity for intimacy is related to psychological adjustment and social competence. So, in order to be intimate and have relationships with other people, you have to adjust psychologically and you have to have social competence. And unfortunately, some people never quite get there. I'm sure we've all met people who are totally incompetent socially. Adolescents who have close, stable, supportive friendships generally have a high opinion of themselves, do well in school, are sociable, and are unlikely to be hostile, anxious, or depressed. So these are well-adjusted kids, who are okay with themselves because they've been given positive reinforcement and input that they are okay. So, the kids who are more anxious and depressed, now it can be chemical imbalance in the brain, but a lot of times it's the way they were raised. They were given a lot of negative input, and so did not feel very competent, that they could handle life. And that's a shame. A bidirectional process seems to be at work. Good friendships foster adjustment, which in turn fosters good friendships. So if you're a good friend, that helps you to be more well-adjusted, and it also helps your friends to be more well-adjusted. And then you become more well-adjusted. So it's a feedback loop that is good for you because you want to have successful relationships in the future. I got mosquito bites and they're itching me terrible. Shared confidences and emotional support seem to be more vital to female friendships than to male friendships. And I think we all know that. The girls, we hang out more. We're more concerned about who's friends with who and who's your best friend and all that. And the boys, they just like to hang out and play together. They just want a friend that likes the same stuff they like and they can hang out and play together. Boys' friendships focus less on conversation than on shared activity, usually sports and competitive games. Like I said, that's the way boys are. Girls feel better after telling a friend about an upsetting experience than boys do. And that's just the way it is. Boys may express support by just spending time doing things together. And that's just kind of how boys are. They like to be together and hang out and stuff like that, but they're not as intimate friends as girls are. Boys tend to gain self-esteem from competing with friends. Girls from helping them. So that's your difference between boys and girls right there. Boys like to compete with the friends, girls like to help the friends, So that's just a difference between males and females. Adolescents in trouble, antisocial behavior, and juvenile delinquency. What influences young people to engage in or refrain from violence or other antisocial acts? Because, people wondered that for centuries. Why would they do that? Why do they act like that? How do problem behaviors escalate into chronic delinquency? Because if you start witnessing some problem behaviors, you should probably step in. One of my children started exhibiting some problem behaviors. We stepped in, and he ended up needing to go to a psychiatrist, and he was on meds and was going to talk to the psychiatrist, and eventually he outgrew that. He's a pretty cool, calm, and collected fella now, and he has no problems. So parental involvement, you gotta love pop-ups, um, is important. If you see a problem, you need to deal with the problem. So many people don't want to deal with the problem. They just gloss over it or figure, that can be something they deal with when they're grown. But it's not. As soon as you see things, you need to step in and make sure they get the help they need so that the rest of us don't have to suffer from their bad behavior. Excuse me. Research suggests that early and continuing patterns of parent-child interaction often pave the way for negative peer influence, which reinforces and promotes antisocial behavior. So, back to you, parents. If your child is acting like that, sometimes it's you. Sometimes you're too harsh, you're too negative, and so your child is going to act out, because no one likes to be treated that way, even kids. And you might say it's for their own good, but it's really actually not for their own good. So, and of course, if a child is depressed or anxious, they're going to seek out other people who are like that. And those people are more prone to be antisocial. So that becomes an antisocial clique. And that's where some problems can come in. Becoming a delinquent, how influences interact. Parents often worry about a teenager's falling in with the wrong crowd. And of course, good parents do worry about that. But actually, parental upbringing influences the choice of peer groups and friends. So if you have a happy, positive child, chances are they're going to be more likely to want to spend time with happy, positive peers. If you have an unhappy, negative child, chances are they're going to want to hang out with unhappy, negative peers. So, the way you treat them and the way their self-esteem and self-worth develops makes the difference. I know you didn't want to hear that, but it's true. Young people generally gravitate to others brought up like themselves, who are similar in school achievement, adjustment, and pro-social or anti-social tendencies. My family was a mixed bag, and I think I got lucky in that because my parents were very negative people, but my maternal grandmother was a very positive, nurturing person. She was definitely, excuse me, authoritative. She would teach you things and explain things to you so you understood. And if you were being good, she praised you, and if you were being bad, she would, talk to you about that too. So, it's like I said, the time that hurt me the most with her is when I had acted up in the store, and she said, "I'm disappointed in your behavior," and that hurt me more than any spanking or anything else I could have got. So, and from that side of the family, I usually got positive reinforcement. And they lived in a different state, and I would only see them during the summer or on holidays or whatever. And the other side of the family is pretty negative and judgmental, so it was a mixed bag. There was some cognizant dissonance there, but because I did have those positive people in my life, that kept me from spiraling too far down. And I exhibited some delinquent behaviors. I think all of us do at some point. But, being in a position to have a positive, nurturing adult, teaching you, that makes all the difference. In the early years, parents begin to shape pro-social or antisocial behavior by whether they meet the children's basic emotional needs. I know you didn't want to hear that either, but there it is. We, like I said, took parenting classes before I had my first child because we both knew our parents was not the best examples. So that's something we decided to do, and we learned a lot. And like I say, my children, anytime they cried, they were at the foot of the bed in their baby bed, we tend to them right away. They go right back to sleep. I knew people who had 2-year-olds who still weren't sleeping through the night and crying and everything. Mine, about 3 months old, they were sleeping through the night. They knew if there was any problem, Mom and Dad's right here, we're good. And then when they got to where they were standing up, they went to their own room, and occasionally they'd still have a nightmare or something, but most of the time, no, they were fine on their own. Like I say, compared to some other people's kids, my kids seem to be great. But I think it's because we learned how to nurture them and raise them in a positive way, and that makes all the difference. Parents of chronic delinquents often fail to reinforce good behavior in early childhood and were harsh or inconsistent or both in punishing misbehavior, because then you're giving the kids mixed message, like, is this okay or not? Excuse me, my allergies have been acting up. I'm itching. It's not good. Oh my gosh. Through the years, these parents typically have not been closely and positively involved in their children's lives. And there were parents like that that I knew. Some were kind of like that. They eventually got better, but not while I was a kid. My mother would never go to meetings or anything like that when I was a kid. Other kids' moms would like bring cupcakes, and I'd be jealous of those kids. But my mom was like, no, I'm working on, I'm not dealing with that. Let somebody else deal with that. But then by the time my little sister was doing this, my mother would take some time off for the afternoon to bring in some cupcakes for her birthday and things like that. And so I was pretty jealous about that. I was like, well, she never did that for me. But, that's important to kids because that shows you care, shows you give a crap about them. So that's an important thing in a child's life. You might not think it's a big deal. You got your own life going on. You need to take care of your own life. You don't need to do all that for them. Well, guess what? You kind of do if you want them to turn out to be good people. Sorry. Didn't let you off the hook. The children may get payoffs for antisocial behavior. When they act up, they may gain attention or get their own way. So what they learn is if they're bad, they get some attention and they might get their way. So what you've just done is teach them that their bad behavior pays off, which is not the lesson you want to teach them. Children with behavior problems tend to do poorly in school and do not get along with well-behaved classmates. Because the well-behaved classmates are like, oh my gosh, look at them. Look how they're acting. So no, they're not going to get along with well-behaved classmates because well-behaved classmates are appalled at the way, they're behaving. Unpopular and low-achieving children gravitate toward each other and egg each other on to further misconduct. And I'm sure we all know kids like that. And I dare you. Wouldn't it be funny if you did this? I dare you. I think we've all been in that situation. These problem children continue to elicit ineffective parenting, which often leads in adolescence to delinquent behavior and association with deviant peers. So if you have a antisocial parent, then they're going to raise a child probably in an antisocial way, and that furthers that down the line. And your antisocial child is going to seek out more antisocial delinquent type peers because they're having fun with this. So like I say, the way you treat the child, the way you raise the child is the most important thing in their life. It gives them the base that they build on. Antisocial teens tend to have conflictual relationships with parents. For example, that may be largely genetic, for reasons that may be largely genetic. Because if the parent is that way, there could be some chemical problems in the brain, some imbalance, and that also can be passed on to the child. So, back in the day, like my grandparents' generation, I would hear people say about families, they would just label the whole family, oh, them so-and-sos, they're no good, and I thought, well, that's mean. You can't judge all of them by one or two of them, but sometimes these things do run in families, and even though you shouldn't judge other people, if you know this person's like that and this person's like that and these kids are starting to exhibit that, that might be a thing. As in childhood, antisocial adolescents tend to have antisocial friends, and their antisocial behavior increases when they associate with each other. So again, you get out what you put in. So if that's what they're doing, is they constantly hanging out with antisocial kids, then they're going to keep exhibiting antisocial behavior. The way antisocial teenagers talk, laugh, or smirk about rule breaking and nod knowingly among themselves constitutes what has been called deviancy training. And like might go back to the book The Lord of the Flies. They're egging each other on. They're reinforcing each other's bad behavior that is training them to be deviant antisocial delinquents. Authoritative parenting can also help young people internalize standards that may insulate them against negative peer influences and open them to positive ones. So if you had a good upbringing, you might listen more to the people who brought you up and think for yourself, say, well, yeah, that's pretty bad. I don't want to do with that. I don't want to deal with these people. I mean, there's been friends I've walked away from. There's been, people that I've been in business with that I walked away from because the behavior was not what I wanted in my life. So, like I say, you get into your kids, you get out of your kids what you put into them. Improvements in parenting during adolescence can reduce delinquency by discouraging association with deviant peers. And like I said, you should get involved. You meet a kid and you can tell he's smoking pot or he's talking about stealing stuff. You talk to your kid and say, no. Or, one of mine had a kind of a vandal friend, and I told him, no, you're not going to do that. I don't want you hanging with him because I don't want you getting in trouble because I caught my son doing something he shouldn't have been doing. And I was like, no, you're not going to be destroying other people's property. That's not, no, I don't care. It's not happening. And so you're going to stay home, and if I catch you again, every time I catch you, you're getting grounded. So, decide if it's worth it or not. In disadvantaged neighborhoods, a combination of nurturance, involved parenting, and collective socialization practices, such as adults monitoring or supervising each other's children, can minimize deviant relationships. So, you should nurture your children, be involved, go to those PTA meetings, go to those games or practices or, plays, whatever it is, go. Because that shows your child you give a crap about them. And that's what they need. And now this happened more, the supervising each other's children in the neighborhood used to happen more. It doesn't happen now. Everybody's scared because, you're not allowed to say anything to somebody else's kid. Well, I have, and I will. Because somebody needs to teach them something. Clearly they're not getting the lessons at home. So, if you're in front of my house acting the fool, I'm going to let you know about it. Because, I care how the world ends up for my family, and if you're goofing things up for us, then I'm going to let you know about it. Because you shouldn't be. Because I'm not going to go over there, and I'm not going to let my kids go over there and mess up your life. So I don't appreciate yours coming over here and messing up mine. That's just the facts right there. Most juvenile delinquents do not become adult criminals. Many simply outgrow their wild oats. And that's true. I forget the statistics, but it's usually like less than half who had juvenile issues grow up to be criminals. So, I hear people say, oh, they gonna grow up and be a criminal. You don't know that. They might get their stuff together. And a lot of kids do. A lot of them get into trouble and they figure out, well, this ain't worth it. I don't want to end up in prison when I get older, so I'm going to stop this kind of stuff. And that's the smart kid. Because, the dumb one just keeps doing the bad stuff they're doing and ends up in jail later on and, goes that route. Excuse me. Delinquency peaks at about age 15 and then declines as most adolescents and their families come to terms with young people's need to assert independence. Because, that's about halfway through high school, and if they haven't, been very involved in caring parents, they start to realize, whoa, my kid's got a problem. If I don't kind of help him out, nip this in the bud, there's going to be bigger problems. So then a lot of parents who haven't been involved get involved. And honestly, by then, you're a little late. Should have started when they were, that big. But at least they become involved. And then the kids start to realize, this is affecting my future. This is not the future I want for myself. Help me out, And, a lot of people say that when the kids are acting out like this, that's a cry for help. And it is. Because what they're telling you is, I'm not happy. I'm not happy, and I'm going to show you that I'm not happy. And if that happens, you need to listen. Because that's telling you something's not right. However, teenagers who do not see positive alternatives are more likely to adopt a permanently antisocial lifestyle. So if they're in an economically stressed area, or if they're in a bad neighborhood and they don't see any positives in their life, they're more likely to give up, say, doesn't matter, I'll do this stuff because why not? Nothing's going to change for me. I got no hope for no future, so do what I want. And that's a shame, because that's not how you want your kids to think about life. Preventing and treating delinquency. Since juvenile delinquency has roots early in childhood, so must preventive efforts. So, again, if you are an authoritative parent, if you are putting positive, constructive messages into your child instead of negative, destructive ones, they're going to have a lot better life. That's just the facts. Adolescents who took part in certain early childhood intervention programs were less likely to get in trouble. So the kids who got a little bit of, nurturing and a little self-esteem, a little image put in there, were less likely to become delinquents. Programs that have achieved impressive long-term results in preventing antisocial behavior and delinquency include the Perry Preschool Project, the Syracuse Family Development Research Project, the Yale Child Welfare Project, and the Houston Parent-Child Development Center. So these are examples of programs that have helped kids. Oh my goodness, that's that same little fly, I bet. And you can look those up. And, if they don't have programs like that in your area, talk to the schools. Sometimes the school resource center can be a good place for you to, ask, where's a preschool program like this? Where can my child get some, esteem building stuff that, they can do outside of just me telling them, you did a good job, because even though you mean well, sometimes with the stresses of school life, because they're not going to get along with every kid and every teacher, they start getting a little discouraged. Each of these model programs, my goodness, targeted high-risk urban children and lasted at least 2 years during the child's first 5 years of life. So when they're a toddler, that it's important that they get positive messages to carry them through the rest of their life. And I know toddlers can be naughty sometimes. I know mine were sometimes. But if all they ever hear is the negative, you getting on them all the time. If they never get any positive reinforcement, you don't give them little extra hugs and tell them, oh, thank you. You put your clothes up just how I asked you to. You did a good job. Oh, look at that. You made your bed really well. They need that positive input. All influence children directly through high-quality daycare and education, and indirectly by offering families assistance and support geared to their needs. So sometimes you got to help the family out. That's why we have social programs. and just ignorant people don't like that. But if you can make a person's life a better place and they're living in a better world, then the rest of us can have a better world, because angry people do angry things and they take it out on everybody else. Misery loves company, as they say. So when everybody's in a better place, that's better for everybody. These programs operated on Bronfenbrenner's mesosystem, and we talked about that a while back if you remember, by affecting interactions between the home and the school or child care center. So again, communication is key. If a teacher's calling you, talking to you, don't automatically cop attitude. Hear what they have to say, because sometimes they see things you don't see. That's why I went to one of my children's school to view him for the day. The teacher was not happy that I didn't make it, but I knew my rights, that I could come in there and do that. Yeah, I didn't have to make an appointment. So I wanted to see what was going on. I was hearing one thing, and the kid was not like that at home. And then after I went and seen, I saw he couldn't see the board. He was sitting funny. Come to find out, he had an actual physical problem to why it was hurting him to sit in this desk. So, we made some accommodations. We got him tested, and he excuse me, needed ECE. So if I hadn't done that, he would have probably just continued to fail in school, because the teacher excuse me, had just decided he was a bad kid. So sometimes it pays to listen. Now, sometimes you listen and then you get more mad than you were. Like with one of my kids, there was some issues in his high school, and the things I was hearing from them was ridiculous. The way they did things, it's like, no, wait a minute. You're talking about a child who is ECE. He has an IEP, and you're violating that because you're not doing what's right. And you're telling me these things are a problem, but you're not doing the right thing. And I had to fight them all the way to the federal level. I had to take them to the feds before they would stop and listen and go, okay, Miss Coleman, okay. And they were just tired of me, and that was fine, because that's what I wanted them to be. I wanted to wear them down, because they weren't going to wear me down. That was my child, and my child was going to be treated fairly. So, and they did the way they did, because I heard from one of the teachers, most parents don't get that involved. Most parents let it go. But since I took it all the way, they had to do it, or I was going to sue them. The next step, I talked to some people about it. The next step was me bringing a lawsuit against them for violating my son's civil rights. So, sometimes you got to just get in there. Got to get in the trenches. It don't matter if your work is hard or you're tired or whatever. So is life. Get your booty involved and be there for your kids. It's the most important thing you can do. The programs also went one step further in the exosystem, don't have a stroke, by creating supportive parent networks and linking parents with community services, including prenatal and postnatal health care and educational and vocational counseling. So, that's what the PTA is all about. You get in there with the other parents, you get some social support, and it's better for all of you to have some self-esteem in yourself, your school, your child, and it builds a community around the school, and that's a positive. Through their multi-pronged approach, these interventions had an impact on several early risk factors of delinquency. So see, you get out of the kids what you put into them. So if they're getting good things, you're going to get good things out of them. It's like if you go back to the Bible, let's talk about the seed that was spread. The seed that fell on good ground sprang up. The seed that fell on the rocky ground sprang up, but then it died out because it had no root. one that fell by the wayside got choked out by the weeds. So your children are just kind of like that. They're the seed you're putting out into the world. And you want to nurture that seed, put it in good ground, water it how it needs to be watered, feed it how it needs to be fed, and then you'll end up with a fairly decent person. Now, they all have their own personalities, and some have more quirks than others, but in general, you're going to end up with decent people. Now, that's one time when my kids were younger, and someone had said this to my mom one time too. My gosh, your kids are so good. They're the most well-behaved kids. And I got that, from someone who worked at a school. So I thought, well, that was pretty nice. Whereas we were at a restaurant with my mom, we knew better than to misbehave at a restaurant. But it wasn't because of the nurturing. But, that's what you got to do. If you want a good, wise, loving, decent person to come out of that child you gave birth to, you got to be a good, wise, loving, decent person and teach them how to also be. That's the facts. And I'm just going to leave you there today. I hope this helped you to figure out maybe a little bit more about why you do what you do. Please like and share this educational program so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. That's all for now. Until next time.